The gathering in Brussels is Donald Trump's first meeting with NATO member states, and he's expected to calm their anxiety over America's commitment to the alliance. The summit has been carefully choreographed to impress the president, who once called NATO obsolete. Well, he was greeted by the Secretary-General himself, who was animatedly showing the president round the brand new headquarters. Donald Trump also took part in the unveiling of two memorials outside the building. Overall, the US president seemed impressed by the new HQ.
And I never asked once what the new NATO headquarters cost. I refused to do that. But it is beautiful.
Well, the actual cost of the headquarters is no secret, $1.2 billion.
Donald Trump didn't really say much publicly during and following his several meetings taking place here in Brussels throughout the day. But when it came to the NATO leadership meeting, he jumped right into what he knows best, and that's money, really channeling his inner business tycoon. And he had a message that he really wanted to bring home to the other leaders.
23 of the 28 member nations are still not paying what they should be paying. If all NATO members had spent just 2% of their GDP on defense last year, we would have had another $119 billion for our collective defense and for the financing of additional NATO reserves.
Apart from telling NATO leaders off about not contributing enough money and really needing to step up their game, Trump did also give them what they wanted to hear. Specifically, he mentioned that NATO does in fact have a future, and he also talked about naughty Russia.
The NATO of the future must include a great focus on terrorism and immigration, as well as threats from Russia and on NATO's eastern and southern borders.
They want an endorsement of Article 5. That's the part of the NATO treaty that says an attack on one NATO country is an attack on all NATO countries. And if you remember, then candidate Trump, during the campaign, called NATO obsolete. When he was elected president, some of the NATO countries were a little concerned about the United States' commitment to that article. Since then, the Secretary of State in March traveled to Brussels, met with NATO leaders, affirmed the U.S. commitment to that, though these leaders would really like to hear that commitment from President Trump himself.
The European Council president says the EU and the US have failed to reach a united stance on Russia. Donald Tusk made the comment after meeting Donald Trump at the EU headquarters in Brussels. Tusk said he is not completely sure that he and Trump have, quote, a common position about Moscow. He, however, said the two sides are on the same line against Russia over the Ukraine crisis. The U.S. and its allies in Europe accused Russia of having a major role in the crisis, an allegation denied by the Kremlin.
I am not 100% sure that we can say today, we means Mr. President and myself, that we have a common position, common opinion about Russia.
EU ties have been strained for months now. Relations began deteriorating following the failed coup attempt in July, when Ankara stated it did not receive enough support from EU leaders. EU leaders have also been criticizing Turkey for human rights issues, especially for the scope of the crackdown since the coup attempt, where thousands have been sacked or suspended. Now, since then, several EU leaders have called for the suspension of membership talks with Turkey, and Ankara is frustrated at the pace of negotiations. However, Erdogan has stated Turkey has no inclinations to break away from the EU. Austria has especially been vocal about disapproval of Turkey's membership bid. In retaliation, Turkey has vetoed NATO's cooperation with Austria. Prior to the trip, Erdogan emphasized the need for solidarity within NATO, especially in the fight against terrorism, stating that information sharing cooperation was crucial.
Now, a U.S. federal appeals court has upheld a ruling blocking President Donald Trump's travel ban on 6 Muslim-majority countries. Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals in Virginia State said the ban spoke with vague words of national security, gripping with religious intolerance and discrimination. Trump issued his first executive order imposing a travel ban on 7 Muslim-majority countries back in January. That order sparked protests throughout the country. It was also met with immediate resistance from U.S. courts, with several federal district judges issuing orders blocking aspects of that order. And then in March, Trump issued a revised travel ban, but it never got off the ground because federal courts also blocked it just hours before it was set to go into effect.
Well, I think the most important thing for us all to realise is, yes, this person detonated and he was on his own perhaps, but almost certainly there will be others and maybe many others involved in the preparation. I mean, I don't want to be the bearer of bad news here, but this attack may not yet be over because almost certainly with the amount of preparation that's gone into this, with the explosives, with the suicide belt, and the timing of this attack means that certainly other people are involved, and the police will be working really hard to find out who those are. I think if we see the threat level go up this afternoon, then we should be preparing ourselves for potentially other attacks.
Officials this morning say the bomber's home in Manchester, where they blew open the door, was a kind of bomb workshop. There are no signs of that now through the open front door of the abandoned house. But officials say they discovered a huge load of unused chemicals, more than enough for several more bombs. And we are learning more this morning about Salman Abedi's rapid road to jihad, a secret life beyond the front page pictures of a British schoolboy and a goofy-looking teenager at the beach. His decision to become part of ISIS came 2 years ago. That's according to the reported confession of his younger brother Hashim, who was arrested Wednesday by police in Libya, supposedly about to carry out his own terror attack. Authorities say Hashim told them that he and his brother began watching ISIS online videos in 2015, closely studying a range of videos on how to build suicide bombs. Experts say the details seen in the pictures of the Manchester bomb, obtained by the New York Times, show greater sophistication, including a design like the one used by ISIS in Paris and Brussels, and more than one detonator.
Really suggesting that he probably did not act alone, that he probably had some help, that he certainly had some advice on how to create the bomb. 5 weeks before the attack, the two brothers traveled to Libya, an ISIS stronghold and the family's ancestral home, with Salman returning to Manchester on May 17th, just 5 days before he would go to the concert arena and then set off his bomb.
Meanwhile, counter-terror raids continue across the UK, and a lot of questions are being asked to the country's authorities regarding the suspected suicide bomber, especially after it was revealed he was not exactly a trouble-free man and also traveled to Libya. And he may not be the only one like that in Manchester, as RT's Alexei Yaroshevsky reports.
Salman Abedi, 22 years of age, British-born son of exiled Libyan dissidents, is understood to have spent time in Libya in 2011, where he may have been radicalized by Islamic groups in that country. Those at the time fought Muammar Gaddafi's regime, but have now plunged the North African country into endless chaos. Authorities now say that Abedi was part of a network and have arrested 6 people, including his older brother. But explosive investigation by Middle East Eye has revealed that the very same UK authorities may have had a totally different relationship with people like Abedi. The outlet interviewed several UK-based Libyans who claim MI5 urged them to fight against Gaddafi's government back in 2011 during NATO's incursion into Libya. One of them, who went on record, Bilal Younis, said he was asked by an intelligence official if he could have joined the fighting in Libya. And while I took time to find an answer, he says, he turned and told me the British government have no problem with people fighting against Gaddafi. He also said the government did not put any obstacles in the way of people going to Libya, and that the vast majority of UK guys were in their late 20s, and most of them were from Manchester.
Foreign fighters are believed to be helping local terrorists in the Philippines, where a bloody battle has been raging for 3 days. Reports say that Malaysians and Indonesians are among 31 militants killed by the security forces. Violence continues in the southern city of Marawi after it was overrun by fighters from the Maute group, a group that's linked to Daesh. Thousands of civilians have been forced to flee the area, which is part of an island where President Rodrigo Duterte has imposed martial law.
Former Greek Prime Minister Lucas Papademos was wounded on Thursday after a letter bomb detonated inside his car. This is the first terror attack in Greece to target a former leader in decades. Hospital officials say the 69-year-old sustained superficial injuries to the chest, abdomen, and legs, but his condition does not inspire concern. 2 of Papademos' guards who were in the car also sustained light injuries. There was no immediate claim of responsibility for the blast. Greek Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras fiercely condemned the attack. Papademos served as Prime Minister from November 2011 until May 2012 and oversaw a controversial debt swap during his administration.
Well, the US would strike pro-government positions in Syria again if threatened. That's according to the commander of the coalition's Operation Inherent Resolve. He was speaking about the recent incident in the city of Al-Tanf, where US-led forces bombed a convoy of government soldiers. Well, since then, the area has become a new hotspot in the war-ravaged country.
Al-Tanf, a small border crossing between Iraq and Syria. Everyone wants it. ISIS, Syrian rebels, the US-led coalition, which helped seize the place and has soldiers stationed and training rebels there. Also, Assad and his allies, who've pushed right up to Al-Tanf. Why do they care so much about a dusty road in the middle of a desert? Well, see for yourself. Al-Tanf lays on the most direct route between Damascus and Baghdad. If Assad takes it, he will all but have a direct land route to Iran, his closest ally. It would be easy to transport weapons, reinforcements, and that would be bad news for rebels and their backers, the US-led coalition. They can't let that happen.
Protesters demanding the resignation of Brazil's President Michel Temer have staged running battles with police in the capital, Brasilia. The army was sent onto the streets after the Agriculture Ministry building was set alight. Police fired volleys of tear gas, stun grenades and rubber bullets to stop thousands of demonstrators as they marched on Congress. They want an end to the government's austerity programme. They're also furious at the corruption scandal, which has now seen Temer accused of paying off a potential witness. One protester was shot and wounded. Other serious injuries were reported. It was the most violent protest in the capital for 4 years.
This is the daily scene in Venezuela. It has been for months. But lately, the violence has taken a turn. A movement turned to madness. Leaders for both the government and opposition struggle to maintain control. Both sides urge nonviolence, but protesters are only getting more angry, and security teams are fighting back with more force. On Wednesday, Venezuela Attorney General Luisa Ortega Diaz announced 55 people have died in clashes in the past several weeks, 52 civilians and 3 security forces. Of the 1,000 injured, 761 are civilians and 229 are either military or police. According to reports, security forces have shot and killed opposition protesters in the streets. And opposition protesters reportedly chased down, stabbed, and then set this government supporter on fire this week, accusing him of trying to steal from a woman in a shocking scene in Caracas. As scenes in the street grow darker, on Tuesday, Maduro announced to his supporters he's pressing on with plans to rewrite the country's constitution in July. In 2016, Maduro abruptly postponed regional elections the opposition was heavily favored to win. The National Electoral Council announced Tuesday those elections will take place this December, a year late. Change the electoral schedule or cancel regional elections altogether. The move risks deepening the crisis seen daily in the streets.
Furious journalists in Mexico have held protests following the murder of one of their colleagues and called on the government to do more to defend the profession. A number of journalists have been murdered in the country this year. In Mexico, it seems there's no justice. It seems there are no institutions which defend journalists, which tell the truth, or which denounce an illegal act. Not even an activist who's facing organised crime, a human trafficking organisation, an organisation that exploits labour. Award-winning journalist Javier Valdez, who had spent his career probing drug traffickers, was killed in Sinaloa, home of the Sinaloa cartel, formerly run by Joaquin Guzman, aka El Chapo.
Likud Knesset member Anat Berko has reportedly gone to the Israeli prime minister with a plan to separate some of East Jerusalem's Palestinian neighborhoods with the municipality. And reportedly, Netanyahu is listening. A few months ago, Berko came to Netanyahu with a detailed map over which she had drawn a border. In her vision, the Palestinian neighborhoods in East Jerusalem would eventually receive municipal services from the Palestinian Authority, including education, welfare, and healthcare. Berko expected the PM to throw her plan out, but instead he asked her to leave the map with him. According to diplomatic sources, both Jerusalem and the White House have been discussing transferring municipal responsibility over part of East Jerusalem to the Palestinians. People close to Netanyahu told the Jerusalem Post that Berko and Netanyahu have met several times since their first meeting, searching for creative options to implement the plan.
Now, today, we have a level of wealth inequality that hurts everyone. When you don't have the freedom to take your idea and turn it into a historic enterprise, we all lose. And right now, today, our society is way over-indexed on rewarding people when they're successful, and we don't do nearly enough to make sure that everyone can take lots of different shots. Now, let's face it. There is something wrong with our system when I can leave here and make billions of dollars in 10 years, while millions of students can't even afford to pay off their loans, let alone start a business. Every generation expands its definition of equality. Previous generations fought for the vote and civil rights. They had the New Deal and Great Society. And now it's time for our generation to define a new social contract. We should have a society that measures progress not just by economic metrics like GDP, but by how many of us have a role we find meaningful. We should explore ideas like universal basic income to make sure that everyone has a cushion to try new ideas.
Most people know this building over here as the Santa Fe train depot. I know her as my friend, my life partner, my wife, Deidre Santa Fe. We've been together since the end of the summer of 2015. I realized I was in love when I had trouble staying away from her. When I had to go home, I hated it when I had to go home. Deidre picked a great place to be here, and I love looking out at the other buildings. We watched that building being built together.
It was nearly 4 years ago, Virginia student A.J. Schalk got a new puppy, a black lab he named Alpha. Since then, the two have been inseparable. A.J. is a type 1 diabetic, and Alpha is more than just the family pet. He is crucial, by A.J.'s side, night and day.
He saved my life multiple times. Middle of the night, he woke up, started barking, woke up my family and I checked my blood sugar and it was extremely low. And if it hadn't been for Alpha being there and woke up barking, I don't know if I'd be here right now.
Alpha is specially trained to detect dangerously low blood sugar 20 to 40 minutes before AJ recognizes it himself. In fact, as our team was in the classroom, we witnessed the signal ourselves, Alpha and his paw sending a message. It turns out AJ's blood sugar was lowering.
He was getting a little restless, and so I had him turn around, look at me, and I was like, "Hey, Alpha, what is it, buddy?" And he gave me the paw.
That same signal all these years. The rest of the time, Alpha quietly sitting in class. He's become a member of the junior class at Stafford High School in Fredericksburg. He has his own school ID. And now the yearbook just out, and there he is on page 220. Alpha, part of the class.
There's always going to be hope, and sometimes the best place to find it is a dog.
He's earned his spot.